the initial sign was barely perceptible. Over the still morning air, a low, rasping exhale was carried. The lion lay at the edge of the clearing, half concealed in the tall grass, his eyes half closed, one paw bent awkwardly beneath him, his fur matted with dried blood. Each shallow, uneven breath was a fragile whisper against the growing hum of the awakening forest. From a distance, she had spotted him, drawn by the quiet distress so often overlooked by the world. In that instant, his name was irrelevant. He was simply a creature clinging to existence. Every flick of his tail, every twitch of his ear, told a story of fatigue, pain, and profound vulnerability. Her approach was slow and careful, letting her presence communicate calm rather than any sense of threat. As the sun crept higher, golden rays were scattered through the canopy, highlighting the stiff, uneven lines of his body. A faint, almost mournful moan punctuated each shallow exhale, a sound carried delicately on the wind, enough to tighten the heart. She knelt, resting her hand briefly on the grass before him, her whisper soft. "It's okay. I'm here." The sound seemed to settle him, if only a fraction, and his eyes lifted to meet hers, a mixture of curiosity and weariness within them. Around them, the forest held its breath. The scent of crushed leaves and wet earth mingled with the faint, iron tang of blood. Unaware of the fragile life struggling nearby, small insects hummed their persistent rhythm. A small tremor ran through the lion's frame as he shifted. Each movement was cautious and deliberate. Minutes passed as she surveyed the injury, a deep, tender, and swollen gash along his shoulder, the kind that could claim a life if left untended. There was no panic, no sudden gestures, just a steady, measured observation. Fetching water in a shallow container, she offered it carefully, letting him choose the moment to drink. Slowly at first, the lion's tongue rasped against the edge, then grew more eager as trust began to build in tiny increments. With patience, she worked as time stretched, her hands steady, her murmurs encouraging, never forcing or crowding. With subtle shifts, a tilt of the head, a soft rumble of acknowledgement, a slow blink of his eyes, he responded. Even amidst his pain, a quiet nobility, a dignity, filled the space that lay between them. By late afternoon, the first real breakthrough arrived. The lion fully lifted his head, muscles straining, yet willing to follow her guiding hand towards a safer patch of shade. His movements were hesitant but determined, and in silence, she let the fragile bond form. There was no rushing, only the quiet miracle of a shared presence, of life clinging on, gently coaxed by care and patience. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky with streaks of rose and amber, the lion rested with less strain, his tail flicking against the soft dirt. The forest seemed to exhale right alongside him. From distant treetops, birds called, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers through the clearing. Stepping back, she allowed him space, watching as he finally stretched before curling into a more comfortable position. The shadows of his pain were softened by trust and the beginnings of recovery. For a final moment, her hand lingered in the air, a silent farewell and acknowledgement. The light, the wind, the forest, all bore witness to a fragile life preserved, a quiet grace shared between two souls. And as she turned away, the lion lifted his head briefly, his eyes meeting hers one last time before he sank back into the evening stillness, alive, free, and dignified. The morning stillness was broken by a low groan. The lion stirred, his body trembling and tense as he attempted to rise. With every shift, the wound along his shoulder throbbed, and beneath him, a thin streak of blood had darkened the grass. He wasn't fully conscious, yet he was aware, a flicker of survival burning in his amber eyes. Cautiously, she moved, careful not to alarm him. Her gaze was soft yet steady, each step measured and deliberate. The forest buzzed quietly around them, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, the distant calls of birds. But consumed by his own weakness, the lion barely noticed. Kneeling a short distance away, she observed. It took time, but eventually he attempted a slow, unsteady rise. Under the effort, his muscles ached and trembled, and a soft whine escaped him. "Steady. You can do this," she murmured, her voice a low, calm thread in the tense morning. He flinched at first, then persevered, leaning on her presence for a reassurance he could not yet comprehend. The ground beneath them was uneven, littered with fallen leaves and roots. The scent of pine and damp earth mixed with the metallic tang of his blood. He stumbled, steadying himself against a tree trunk with his paw, claws scraping against the bark. In each careful movement, pain radiated, yet he refused to collapse again. Offering him a shallow dish of water, she watched as he lapped cautiously, each sip slow but resolute. Hours passed. His breathing grew steadier, his muscles flexing and relaxing in a more normal rhythm. Higher rose the sun, dappling his fur with gold. In subtle gestures, small victories came. A blink, a flick of the tail, a gentle nudge towards her hand. She offered quiet guidance, letting him choose each step. There was no loud insistence, no rush, only patience and the soft, growing understanding forming between lion and human. By afternoon, the lion managed to crawl a few meters into a patch of softer grass. He paused, ears swiveling at distant sounds, a branch cracking, a distant animal call, before lying down. Even in pain, his posture retained a vestige of strength, a reminder that survival was still within reach. She sat nearby in silence, feeling the tension ease as he rested more comfortably. A sudden rustle from the underbrush made him flinch. Instinctively, his muscles coiled, his body tensing. "It's safe," she whispered, holding her open hands palms down, letting him sense her calm. Slowly, the tension left his shoulders, and he exhaled a long, trembling sigh. Fragile and almost imperceptible, the moment marked the first true sign of trust. As the sun tilted towards evening, warm light bathed the clearing. The lion lifted his head, his eyes soft, observing her as much as the surrounding forest. She smiled faintly, standing slowly to give him room, and he settled into a cautious, relaxed posture. Quiet, but undeniable, the bond had deepened. Survival had shifted from mere struggle to a glimmer of possibility, a fragile hope balanced on the gentle edge of care. The first hint of danger arrived as a soft rustle in the underbrush, a sound too purposeful to be mere wind. The lion's ears twitched, his muscles coiling instinctively, his amber eyes narrowing. Over the past day, he had grown stronger, yet the deep wound along his shoulder still throbbed, a silent reminder that survival was never a guarantee. A few steps away, she remained, her heart steady but alert. Her every movement was deliberate and non-threatening, her hands loose at her sides. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. In fractured beams, sunlight sifted through the canopy, illuminating dust motes floating in the warm air. From hidden branches, birds called tentatively, and the faint scent of wildflowers blended with damp soil and the subtle, iron tang of his injury. Slowly, the lion rose, his movements careful and deliberate, pain flared with each step, yet he pressed on, driven by instinct and the faint trust he had begun to place in her presence. From deep within his chest, a low growl rumbled, not of aggression, but of uncertainty, a question cast into the quiet. "It's all right. Take your time," she whispered softly, letting her calm presence envelop him without pressure. Suddenly, a sharp cry echoed nearby. A smaller creature, a fox startled by the day's heat, darted across the clearing. Instantly, the lion's body tensed, his claws scraping against the earth. He lunged forward instinctively, then stopped, realizing the motion would strain his shoulder. His eyes flicked towards her, almost questioning. With a small step forward, she extended her hand slightly, and he hesitated, caught between newly formed trust and instinct. As minutes stretched, he tested his strength. Pain cut through every movement, but surrender was not an option. The muscles in his legs quivered, his paw flexing against the uneven ground. Gradually, he inched closer to her, seeking the reassurance necessary to move without fear. The soft sway of leaves overhead, the faint buzz of insects, even the distant calls of other animals, all seemed to fade around the tense, fragile bond forming in the clearing. By mid-afternoon, the lion had managed to climb onto a small rise of earth, using the incline to ease the strain on his shoulder. With deliberate care, he lay down, his eyes scanning the forest for any threat. Nearby, she knelt, placing a shallow dish of water within reach, her hand brushing gently against the grass. He drank cautiously, each movement measured, a careful dance between trust, pain, and instinct. On a sudden breeze, the scent of rain and wild foliage arrived, and with it came a moment of stillness. He lifted his head, ears swiveling, his eyes soft yet alert. She watched him, sensing the subtle shift, the faint easing of tension, the first real sign of returning resilience. For an instant, it seemed the forest itself was holding its breath, witnessing the fragile miracle of a wounded life beginning to heal, tempered by quiet courage and patience. Long shadows were cast as the sun dipped low across the clearing. Partially curled, the lion lay, his muscles relaxing against the soft earth. She stood slowly, giving him space, and he allowed her retreat without hesitation. Hard-won and delicate, trust had deepened. Strength was returning, but so was the understanding that survival was possible for this fragile creature, even in the face of lingering uncertainty and pain. A sharp crack, a fallen branch, or perhaps a warning, echoed through the forest. The lion's ears twitched, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the undergrowth. His shoulder ached, muscles still stiff from the previous day's struggle. Yet something had shifted. The shadow of weakness that had clung to him was lifting, replaced by a quiet determination. Nearby, she remained, patient yet cautious. Her presence was steady and calm, an anchor in the tension-filled clearing. The forest seemed alive with anticipation, the scent of damp earth rising from the morning dew, the faint hum of insects, the rustle of leaves stirred by a playful breeze. Filtering through the canopy, sunlight dappled the lion's fur in warm streaks of amber and gold, highlighting both his injuries and his growing strength. Testing his legs, the lion rose on unsteady paws. Pain flared in his shoulder, but he moved with deliberate care, his muscles trembling yet obedient. He sniffed the air, the quiet rustle of surrounding wildlife reminding him of the world beyond pain. "Take it slow. You're stronger than you think," she whispered, and he paused, his ears swiveling at the gentle tone. It seemed to reach him, a soft acknowledgement that he was not alone. As the afternoon deepened, a challenge presented itself. A shallow creek, its water running briskly over smooth stones, cut through the clearing. Cautiously, the lion approached, his tail flicking with tension. The current called to him, a test of balance, strength, and trust in himself. She moved beside him, but not ahead, letting him lead, guiding only with soft, reassuring words. Carefully, he lowered himself to the edge, his paw testing the slippery stone. Water lapped against his claws, and he hissed softly, a low warning directed more at himself than anyone else. She stayed still, her hand hovering just above the water's edge, a silent presence of support. Gradually, the lion shifted forward, each step measured until he had navigated the creek with a trembling yet determined grace. The air was filled with the scent of fresh water, moss, and the faint tang of wet fur, all mingling in the warm forest haze. Across the creek, he paused, head lifted, his eyes surveying the forest beyond. As if nature itself recognized the triumph in his cautious courage, the clearing seemed to exhale, the tension lifting. She knelt briefly, letting her gaze meet his, and he blinked slowly, a subtle acknowledgement of trust. No words were necessary. The bond between them spoke louder than any sound could. By evening, the lion had crossed completely and settled into the soft grass on the far bank. His shoulders, though still tender, bore weight with greater ease. Dipping low, the sun painted the sky with streaks of amber and rose. In the distance, birds called softly, and a gentle wind rustled the leaves overhead. He rested, his tail flicking once in contentment, his eyes half closed, absorbing the warmth and quiet of the evening. Stepping back, she stood and gave him space. The courage and trust he had shown were palpable, a fragile miracle forged through quiet determination, care, and patience. And as the forest darkened into twilight, the lion's chest rose and fell steadily, stronger now, ready to face the wild on his own terms. Filled with the soft sigh of leaves and the distant calls of evening birds, the forest was quiet. The lion stretched, muscles rippling under his golden fur, the long shadow of his struggle fading with the sinking sun. The faintest mark of old pain lingered on his shoulder, but it no longer slowed him. Tempered by patience and the gentle guidance that had carried him this far, strength had returned. From a short distance, she watched, her heart full yet careful not to intrude. Around them, the clearing shimmered in warm light. Across the mossy floor, amber rays pooled in soft patches, highlighting the gentle sway of tall grasses. The scent of wildflowers, earth, and the lingering warmth of the day filled the air, wrapping them both in a quiet reverence. Fully, the lion rose, each movement deliberate, every step a testament to endurance. He padded toward the forest's edge, his tail flicking with subtle grace. A soft breeze ruffled his mane, carrying the faint hum of insects and the distant rush of a stream. She remained still, letting him lead, knowing the moment required no words. A rustle in the underbrush made him pause, his ears swiveling, alert yet calm. From the deeper forest, another lion emerged, a companion, its eyes wide with cautious recognition. Slowly, they approached each other, bodies tense, movements careful, until a soft nuzzle dissolved the tension. Silently, relief and recognition passed between them. The wounded lion lowered his head, a quiet gesture of acceptance and trust. Touching the horizon, the sun streaked the sky with colors that mirrored the lion's fur, gold, amber, and soft rust. Briefly, he turned his head towards her, his eyes steady, almost acknowledging the bond they had formed. In her heart, she nodded faintly, a whisper of farewell, knowing the moment would linger forever. With one last glance, he vanished into the forest, moving with newfound confidence and strength. In the fading light, birds called, leaves rustled gently, and the clearing seemed to sigh with quiet gratitude. For a moment, she remained, watching the colors fade and the shadows deepen, before stepping back onto the soft earth of the forest path. The day had begun with pain, struggle, and uncertainty. It now ended with trust, freedom, and the silent echo of courage shared between lion and human. In memory, the forest held them both, a quiet witness to compassion, resilience, and the fleeting miracle of a life preserved.